Welcome to Pennsylvania in Focus. I'm Kristen Smith, Pennsylvania editor for the Center Square. Joining me today is the Center Square's Pennsylvania reporter, Anthony Hennon. Anthony, you wrote about this week long-term homelessness in Pennsylvania. It's an issue across the country, and it's something that has been particularly difficult for officials to address. So would you start out by just explaining what you mean by long-term homelessness?
Yeah, so basically these are the chronic cases. These are people who have either been out on the street for a year or longer. Generally, they tend to have more issues with addiction, some sort of mental illness is cropping up. I think the easiest way to see that is these are the hard cases. These are not someone who may be down in their luck for a month or two and then they find some stability or they get help from family. These are generally people who are really struggling either physically, mentally, psychologically. Generally, they don't have many connections or a way off the street. So what crops up here, and as we've seen nationally, there's some hope in these numbers. When we're looking at overall homelessness, we're kind of seeing some drops and some significant ones. Nationally, pre-pandemic from 2010 to 2020, homelessness fell by about 33%. And specifically about 55% for veterans. But we are seeing chronic homelessness creep up a bit. It's gone up by about 4%. When we're looking more on the state level, Pennsylvania has about 15,000 residents who are homeless. And then specifically in Philadelphia, we've also seen a 22% decrease in homelessness from 2018 to 2022, and a 19% reduction in chronic homelessness. But those chronic numbers grew after the pandemic, jumping up by about 14% from 2021 to 2022. So we're seeing some progress, but there's still some difficulties happening, and we're kind of seeing some numbers climbing up that we don't necessarily want to see.
The solution to homelessness seems rather obvious, and that's build more houses, but it seems like from your reporting that Pennsylvania just won't get out of its own way.
Yeah, I mean that is yes. Essentially, the more housing we get built out, the more shelters we get built out, the more affordable places get. People tend to stay off the street, or they have some sort of safety net to fall back on. The problem here in Pennsylvania, it's not necessarily unique. A lot of states are seeing this, where one of the issues is simply there's a lot of red tape out there. There's a long process to go through to actually get more housing built. There's various barriers with zoning rules that can limit action. We're seeing also, other places there's more innovation going on and more flexibility, where state-owned land is a perfect opportunity. Some experts say to build more housing or to use that for housing services, but that's not quite happening yet. There's a lot of either the inherent stagnation that we see in state agencies can be a problem here. We'll see local opposition from people who don't necessarily want this type of housing near them. So there's a lot of hurdles to be addressed, even when you do have some support or a push to do this in the first place.
So you mentioned it's a problem for many states, but are there any that have found a way to handle this better than Pennsylvania?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you want to address this on the state level specifically. I think more what we're seeing is some hopeful programs on the city level. Denver has been held up as an example of how to approach things. Houston, Texas, also at the same time. Houston is a bit of an outlier here in that they don't actually have traditional zoning. So there's simply fewer barriers to building different types of housing in across the city. But we're also seeing some movement on the state level when we're looking at Montana. Montana has had issues with housing unaffordability, and prices have been going up dramatically. So they've taken some action to relax its zoning rules so more housing can be built. It's not only single family housing that gets immediately approved. Now you're seeing more duplexes, quadplexes, more apartment buildings it's easier for them to get through. And so that's helping drive down some of these costs, which helps deal with overall homelessness. Because when we see a lot of studies going on, the more pricey that housing gets, we do see an uptick in homelessness.
Listeners can keep up with this story and more at thecentersquare.com. For Anthony Hennon, this is Kristen Smith. Please subscribe and thanks for listening.